because he's not very intelligent and undoubtedly remains damaged by the early death of his mother, Diana. And he very foolishly blames the media for her, in his words, murdered her, which is complete nonsense.
Harry hasn't got the intellect, he hasn't got the legal advice, he hasn't got the ability. And there was an agent who told, two agents who told horrible stories about her bullying and her oppression.
The walls are closing in on Montecito. What began as whispers in dark corners of the internet has exploded into a full-scale royal crisis that refuses to be silenced. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle built their post-royal life on one promise: protecting their children from the very spotlight that haunted Harry's childhood. But that promise is crumbling before our eyes. Tom Bower, the notorious royal biographer who's made a career out of exposing uncomfortable truths about the powerful, has dropped what many are calling a bombshell. His latest claims about Archie and Lilibet have reignited a firestorm of speculation that the Sussex camp cannot seem to extinguish. And this time, the silence from California is deafening. How did we get here? More importantly, where does this end? The architect of uncomfortable truths, Tom Bower isn't your average tabloid journalist chasing clicks with wild theories. His track record speaks for itself. From Robert Maxwell to Mohammed Al-Fayed, from Richard Branson to Prince Charles himself, Bower has built a reputation on one principle: following the trail wherever it leads, regardless of who gets uncomfortable. His 2018 biography on Prince Charles was a #1 bestseller that forced difficult conversations about rehabilitation, image management, and the machinery behind the monarchy. When Bower turned his attention to Meghan Markle, eyebrows were raised. Here was a woman who had captivated a prince, modernized the monarchy's image, and then walked away from it all. The story had all the elements Bower thrives on: power, ambition, secrets, and the collision between private truth and public narrative. "I choose people who don't want to be written about," Bower has said plainly, "whose lives are shrouded in mystery and they want to hide their secrets. I just love digging away to find out what they don't want us to know." That statement alone should have sent shockwaves through Montecito. Because if there's one thing Tom Bower has proven time and again, it's this: the truth eventually surfaces. And when it does, it's rarely kind to those who tried to bury it. His investigation into Meghan's pre-royal life uncovered uncomfortable patterns, friends who suddenly went silent, a father left behind, a first marriage that seemed to evaporate from the official narrative, and, according to Bower, a woman whose primary motivation was never love or duty, but something far more transactional. That has always been her motive, Bower stated bluntly. She's money-obsessed and always has been, and that is why she married Prince Harry. Harsh words? Absolutely. But Bower backs them up with a claim that hits even harder. A great surprise and disappointment was to discover that Prince Harry had very little money. She imagined he'd be worth hundreds of millions, if not billions. And she's having to make up for it now.
But I think he loved the adulation. He loved it when he was being praised, especially when he was a soldier.
Whether you believe Bower's characterization or not, one thing is undeniable. The financial reality of Harry and Meghan's post-royal life doesn't match the fairy tale. The Netflix deals, the Spotify contract that crashed and burned, the tell-all memoir, the endless stream of carefully staged appearances, all of it points to a couple scrambling to maintain a lifestyle that their actual resources can't support. They need the money, and they need it now more than ever because they've got no other source of income, Bower argues. They're stuck with the devil now. They're tied to Netflix. They're tied to their book. And all the criticism they're going to take means nothing, because that's the only way they can earn their money. This isn't just royal gossip anymore. This is about survival. And when survival is at stake, people make choices that can haunt them forever. The questions that won't go away. So what exactly is Tom Bower claiming now? The details are explosive, uncomfortable, and according to him, worthy of answers that have never been provided. Bower raises questions about the births of both Archie and Lilibet, not out of cruelty, but because in his assessment, the public record doesn't add up. Timelines that shifted, hospital announcements that came late or not at all, pregnancy photos that seemed inconsistent, medical details that remained mysteriously vague despite the couple's otherwise constant media presence.
Quite honest, when I first saw it, I thought this was a sort of spoof that had been made up by somebody because it was so utterly ridiculous.
For any normal family, these would be private matters. End of story. But Harry and Meghan aren't a normal family. They're 6th and 7th in line to the British throne. Their children hold titles. Their bloodline carries constitutional weight. And when you accept those privileges, transparency isn't optional. It's essential. We know that they deceived the public about the birth date and time of the whole event, Bauer claims. Referring to Archie's arrival, he points to statements that were later contradicted, lawyers who issued carefully worded denials, and a general pattern of obscuring rather than clarifying. Critics have spent years dissecting the timeline of Archie's birth. Why was the announcement delayed? Why did the stated plans for the Portland hospital apparently change without explanation? Why were there conflicting reports about where Meghan actually gave birth? She never intended to go to the Portland hospital, Bauer suggests. She intended to have the baby at home. Home birth? Perfectly fine. Private medical choice? Absolutely within her rights. But if that's what happened, why wasn't it simply stated? Why the confusion? Why the carefully managed narrative that seemed to shift depending on who was asking? And then there's Lilibet, named after the Queen herself, born in California, and yet almost entirely absent from public view beyond carefully controlled images. No extended family visits captured on camera. No casual moments with grandparents. No spontaneous appearances that mark the childhoods of other royal children. The distance is stark. William and Catherine's children are regularly photographed at public events, trooping the color, Christmas services, school pickups. The world watches them grow. But Archie and Lilibet, they exist almost entirely in the abstract, mentioned in interviews, referenced in statements, but rarely seen and never in the company of the broader royal family. Why? Is it truly about protection, as Harry and Meghan claim, or is there something else driving this separation?
Meghan Markle, his wife, is pregnant. Now, since she's pregnant, she asked him to give up a few things.
The explosive claim that changes everything. But Bauer's most incendiary claim isn't about timelines or hospital announcements. It's about a conversation that allegedly took place long before Archie was even born. A conversation that, if true, reframes everything we thought we knew about the racist royal narrative that dominated headlines for years.
It's pretty clear to all her friends and people who work for her not to talk to me, so it was quite an uphill struggle, but I found enough people, more than enough, nearly 80 people to talk.
According to Bauer, very early in Harry and Meghan's relationship, when marriage was being discussed but nothing was official, there was a casual family moment at Clarence House. Prince Charles, Camilla, and Harry were together and the conversation turned to potential children. Camilla just laughingly says, "Well, any child you'll have will probably have brown skin and ginger hair," Bauer recounts. And they all laugh, including Harry. Not because of racism. It's just one of those things everybody imagines. When somebody close to you is pregnant, you wonder what the child will look like. But it was not said as anything other than that. If Bauer's version is accurate, this was not the sinister, deeply racist concerns about how dark the baby's skin might be. Conversation that Meghan described to Oprah Winfrey. This was a lighthearted family moment. The kind of speculation that happens in millions of households when a mixed-race couple is expecting a child.
I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point.
But here's where it gets complicated. During that Oprah interview, Meghan's body language told its own story. When pressed on the details, she became visibly uncomfortable, hedged, deflected. She wouldn't name who said it. She couldn't provide context. And when Harry later tried to clarify, his version seemed softer, more ambiguous than Meghan's initial framing suggested. The body language just showed her discomfort as she dug deeper into her own hole, one body language expert noted while reviewing the footage. There are two truths here, and they don't match up. So which version is real? Was it a cruel, racist interrogation about skin color? Or was it an innocent, affectionate moment twisted into something far darker for strategic purposes? The answer matters, because if the racism narrative that launched 1,000 headlines was based on a fundamental misrepresentation, then what else in the Sussex story has been carefully reframed to serve a narrative rather than reflect reality? The Montecito pressure cooker. While the world debates timelines and photographs, life inside the Montecito mansion is reportedly reaching a breaking point. Multiple sources close to the couple describe an atmosphere thick with tension, anxiety, and barely contained panic. Harry, they say, is spiraling, glued to his phone, obsessively reading comments, watching YouTube breakdowns, tracking every new theory that emerges online. He paces, he snaps at staff, he barely sleeps. Every photo of his children, every pregnancy timeline, every claim from Bauer or anyone else gets dissected in real time, and Harry is watching it all unfold with increasing helplessness. He's not the same person, one former friend reportedly said. The fun, cheeky prince is gone. What's left is someone who looks haunted. The irony is crushing. This is the man who built a public identity around mental health advocacy, who spoke openly about his own struggles with anxiety and grief, who urged others to seek help, to talk, to break the cycle of suffering in silence.
Can be going down these rabbit holes, and before you know it, within 24 hours, they could be taking their life.
And now, he appears to be trapped in exactly that cycle, unable to control the narrative, unable to silence the questions, unable to protect the one thing he said mattered most: his children's privacy and peace. Friends from his military days, people who stood by him through scandal after scandal, are reportedly pulling back. Not publicly. That would be too disloyal. But quietly, carefully, creating distance. Because even those who love Harry are starting to wonder, is he a victim here, or is he complicit in something that's spiraling beyond anyone's control? Meghan, meanwhile, is handling the pressure very differently. Reports describe her as cold, tactical, laser-focused. While Harry unravels, Meghan strategizes. Legal teams are mobilized. Cease and desist letters fly. Media outlets receive warnings. Influencers get legal threats. But here's the problem with that approach. It looks defensive. And when you respond to questions with lawyers instead of clarity, people start wondering what you're hiding. If there's nothing to clear up, why let the story grow legs? Critics keep asking. Why not just provide the documentation, the transparency, the simple answers that would shut this down immediately? Every legal maneuver, every threat, every refusal to engage directly only adds fuel to the fire, because silence doesn't calm suspicion, it amplifies it. The palace's calculated silence. And then there's the elephant in the room. The royal family's complete and utter silence. No public statements from King Charles, no warm grandfather photos with Archie and Lilibet, no casual family moments captured during royal events, no visible support for Harry during what should be a moment of family solidarity. Just nothing. Compare that to the constant, warm, public presence of Prince William and Catherine's children. George, Charlotte, and Louis are everywhere, trooping the color, Christmas services, royal weddings, jubilee celebrations. The world watches them grow, sees them interact with their great-grandmother, when she was alive, their grandfather, their extended family. The contrast is impossible to ignore, and it raises an uncomfortable question. Is this distance punishment, or is it protection? There's a theory gaining traction among royal watchers, one that's hard to dismiss. What if the palace has been deliberately maintaining space between the Sussexes and the institution? What if senior advisors saw this crisis coming years ago and made the calculated decision to insulate the monarchy from whatever fallout might eventually occur? If that's true, then the palace isn't just staying silent now. They've been preparing for this moment, letting Harry and Meghan operate independently, maintaining cordial but distant relations, ensuring that when questions finally reach critical mass, the institution could truthfully say, "We have no knowledge of the details. These are private family matters handled privately." It's cold, it's strategic, and if you understand how the monarchy has survived for over 1,000 years, it's exactly what you'd expect. Constitutional expert after constitutional expert has pointed out the same uncomfortable truth. Questions about lineage and succession aren't tabloid gossip. They're matters of state. If doubt exists at the highest levels about the legitimacy or transparency surrounding potential heirs, that's not a personal problem. It's an institutional crisis, and institutions don't play games with succession. They prepare, they protect, they plan for worst-case scenarios. Is that what's happening here? Has the palace already gamed out every possibility, every legal scenario, every potential constitutional challenge that might arise if Tom Bower's questions prove impossible to satisfactorily answer? The silence suggests they have. The viral storm that won't stop. What makes this crisis different from previous Sussex scandals is the sheer velocity of its spread. This isn't contained to British tabloids anymore. It's everywhere. Social media is flooded with hashtags demanding answers. YouTube channels dedicated to royal analysis are getting millions of views dissecting every photo, every timeline inconsistency, every statement that doesn't quite add up. TikTok creators are breaking down body language from old interviews. Reddit threads stretch for thousands of comments, each one adding another piece to the puzzle. And mainstream media, which once dismissed these questions as fringe conspiracy theories, is starting to pay attention, not endorsing the claims yet, but asking why the claims won't die. Why respected journalists like Tom Bower are willing to stake their reputations on these questions. Why the Sussex response has been legal threats rather than simple transparency. Something isn't adding up has become the rallying cry. Fair or not, that's the perception spreading like wildfire. And every day that passes without a clear, definitive response only makes it worse. From a PR standpoint, this is catastrophic. The Sussex brand was built on authenticity, vulnerability, and breaking free from archaic royal constraints to live their truth. That brand is now collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. How can you claim to champion truth while refusing transparency? How can you demand privacy while monetizing your family story through Netflix documentaries and tell-all memoirs? How can you position yourself as victims of media cruelty while carefully staging every public appearance down to the last detail? The cognitive dissonance is too much, and people are noticing. What happens next? So here we are. Tom Bower has struck a match, the fire is spreading, and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are running out of time to control it. The options before them are stark and unforgiving. Option 1. Full transparency. Release birth certificates. Provide hospital records. Offer detailed timelines. Open up in a way that leaves no room for doubt. Answer every question directly, comprehensively, and verifiably. Would it be humiliating? Probably. Would it feel like a violation of privacy? Absolutely. But would it end the speculation? Yes, immediately. Option 2. Continue with strategic silence and legal warfare. Hope the story burns itself out. Rely on loyal fans to dismiss critics as conspiracy theorists. Wait for the next royal scandal to shift attention elsewhere. The problem with option 2 is that these questions aren't going away. They're too fundamental, too tied to constitutional matters, too visible in the public record to be simply ignored or threatened into submission. Option 3. Partial disclosure. Give just enough information to calm mainstream concerns while maintaining core privacy boundaries. Thread the needle between transparency and protection. But threading needles requires skill, credibility, and public trust. And right now, Harry and Meghan are running dangerously low on all three. The historical weight of this moment. Let's be clear about what's at stake here. This isn't just about clearing up confusion or winning a PR battle. This is about legacy. 50 years from now, when historians write about the House of Windsor in the early 21st century, this moment will be included. The questions being asked today will shape how Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are remembered forever. Were they brave truth-tellers who escaped a toxic system to protect their family? Or were they skilled manipulators who leveraged royal connections for financial gain, while obscuring uncomfortable truths? The answer depends entirely on how this crisis is resolved, or not resolved. If Tom Bower's questions are never adequately addressed, suspicion will linger, Historians will note the absence of clarity. Future biographers will point to the silence as evidence of something deliberately hidden. And Archie and Lilibet, innocent children in all of this, will inherit a legacy clouded by doubt. That's not fair. It's not right. But it's the reality of being born into a family where lineage, legitimacy, and transparency aren't optional. They're constitutional requirements. The fatherhood that was supposed to save him. Of all the cruel ironies in this saga, perhaps the cruelest is this: fatherhood was supposed to be Harry's redemption. After years of being the spare, after losing his mother in the most traumatic way imaginable, after decades of being defined by scandal and tabloid headlines, Harry found purpose in being a father. He said so repeatedly, protecting his children, giving them the childhood he never had, breaking cycles of pain and dysfunction. This was his mission. Being a dad grounded him, saved him, gave his life meaning. Friends have said it was his anchor, his healing, his reason for every major decision since stepping away from royal life. And now that very role, the one thing he held sacred, is being called into question. Not his love for his children, no one doubts that, but the transparency surrounding their existence, their births, their place in the royal lineage. If that foundation cracks, what does Harry have left to stand on? The Netflix problem nobody's talking about. Here's another layer to this crisis that deserves attention: the Netflix factor. Harry and Meghan's entire post-royal financial structure is built on content creation. They sold their story, their struggles, their family life to streaming giants for millions of dollars. That's not inherently wrong. Celebrities do it all the time. But there's a fundamental problem when your children become part of the product you're selling while simultaneously claiming you're protecting them from exploitation. You can't have it both ways. You can't monetize Archie and Lilibet's existence through carefully curated documentary footage while demanding that the public has no right to ask basic questions about their lives. The documentary showed glimpses of the children, enough to maintain public interest, but never enough to satisfy basic curiosity. Strategic? Absolutely. But that strategy has now backfired spectacularly because it created a vacuum that Tom Bower and others have rushed to fill. Think about it from the public's perspective. You're being asked to care about these children, to support their parents' massive deals based partly on their family story. But you're also being told that basic questions about timeline and transparency are somehow invasive and inappropriate. That's a tough sell. And the more the Sussex team doubles down on that contradiction, the more suspicious people become. It starts to feel less like protection and more like selective disclosure designed to maximize profit while minimizing accountability. And here's the really uncomfortable truth. If Archie and Lilibet are being kept so private for their safety and well-being, why feature them in Netflix content at all? Why include pregnancy photos, birth announcements, and carefully staged family moments in documentaries that are literally designed for mass consumption and profit? The answer seems obvious to critics: because the children are valuable, not just emotionally, but financially. They're content. They're part of the brand. And that makes every claim about privacy feel hollow. The security excuse that doesn't add up. Harry has repeatedly cited security concerns as the reason for his distance from the UK and the royal family. He's fought legal battles over security funding. He's made impassioned statements about being unable to bring his family back to Britain safely. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. Royal children do face real security threats. That's undeniable. But look closer, and the argument starts to crack. If security is truly the primary concern, why are Harry and Meghan living in California, one of the most photographed, paparazzi-heavy regions in the world? Why are they constantly photographed at celebrity events, restaurants, and public appearances? Why does Meghan do staged photo shoots with the children for magazines if safety is paramount? Compare this to how William and Catherine handle security for their children. You see George, Charlotte, and Louis at controlled royal events with massive security protocols, but you don't see them being used as content for profit-driven media deals. You don't see conflicting messages about privacy versus exposure. The Sussex approach seems to be maximum privacy from royal transparency and family connection, but selective exposure when it serves their brand and financial interests. That's not a security strategy. That's a media strategy. And people are smart enough to see the difference. When Harry talks about not being able to bring his children to the UK safely, critics ask, safe from what exactly? The same British security apparatus that protects every other royal child. The same system that kept Harry himself safe his entire life, despite being one of the most photographed people on Earth? Or is the real concern something else? Is it about avoiding questions that would arise if Archie and Lilibet were regularly present at royal functions? Is it about maintaining control over their image and narrative in a way that wouldn't be possible if they were integrated into the working royal family? These aren't unreasonable questions, and the fact that they keep getting deflected rather than answered only makes them more persistent. The breaking point. Everyone sees coming. Royal watchers who have followed this saga from the beginning all seem to sense the same thing. Something has to give. The current situation is unsustainable. Harry can't continue spiraling into anxiety, while Meghan fights legal battles against an ever-growing chorus of questions. The palace can't maintain strategic silence forever if constitutional concerns become too loud to ignore. The public won't accept vague reassurances when they're being asked to fund security and respect privacy for children, whose very existence seems shrouded in unnecessary mystery. One of three things will eventually happen. First possibility, Harry and Meghan provide comprehensive clarity. They release documentation, give interviews with actual details rather than carefully curated emotions, and put the questions to rest definitively. This would require humility, transparency, and acceptance that their choices have consequences. It would probably hurt their pride and feel like a violation, but it would work. Second possibility. The story reaches critical mass where major media outlets, not just Tom Bower and online commentators, start demanding answers. When respected journalists from The Times, The Guardian, or even American outlets start asking the same questions, the pressure becomes impossible to deflect with cease and desist letters. At that point, Harry and Meghan either answer or face permanent damage to their credibility. Third possibility, the palace intervenes. Behind closed doors, King Charles or senior advisors make it clear that continued ambiguity is putting the institution at risk. They offer an ultimatum: provide clarity or accept formal distance from royal titles, succession, and privileges. That would force Harry's hand in a way that public pressure never could. Right now, we're watching all three possibilities simultaneously build pressure. And anyone who studied royal history knows, when institutional pressure, public pressure, and media pressure converge, something breaks. Always. The children who didn't ask for any of this. In all of this chaos, it's worth pausing to remember the real victims if this situation doesn't get resolved. Archie and Lilibet themselves. These are innocent children who didn't choose to be born into royalty, didn't choose to have their births questioned, didn't choose to become pawns in their parents' complicated relationship with fame, family, and financial necessity. If this controversy continues, those children will grow up Googling their own names and finding thousands of articles, videos, and discussions questioning their legitimacy. They'll see people debating their parentage, their births, their right to royal titles. They'll inherit a legacy of suspicion that could have been prevented with simple transparency. That's not fair to them. And ironically, it's the exact opposite of the protection Harry claims to be providing. He left royal life to shield his children from media intrusion, but by refusing to provide basic clarity, he's ensured they'll face far worse scrutiny than any routine royal childhood would have involved. If Harry truly wants to protect Archie and Lilibet, the answer isn't more silence and more legal threats. It's transparency that removes all doubt so his children can grow up without this cloud hanging over them. Because right now, that cloud is growing darker by the day, and the longer it takes to clear it, the more permanent the damage becomes. Your voice matters. So now it's your turn. You've heard Tom Bower's claims. You've seen the timeline inconsistencies. You've watched the careful media management and the strategic silence from all sides. What do you think is really going on here? Is Prince Harry a victim trapped in a situation beyond his control, manipulated by forces he doesn't fully understand? Or is he an active participant in a carefully constructed narrative that's now collapsing under scrutiny? Is Meghan Markle a protective mother doing what's necessary to shield her children from a cruel media machine? Or is she a master strategist who has obscured fundamental truths for reasons we can only guess at? And most importantly, what should happen next? Should Harry and Meghan provide full transparency to end the speculation once and for all? Or do they have the right to maintain privacy regardless of public pressure? Should the palace intervene and demand clarity for constitutional reasons? Or should they continue their strategic silence and let the Sussexes handle their own crisis? Should Tom Bower be praised for asking difficult questions that need answers, or condemned for fueling conspiracy theories that harm innocent children? These aren't easy questions. There are no perfect answers, but they're the questions that matter right now, in this moment, as a crisis that's been years in the making finally reaches its breaking point. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Are you Team Sussex, believing they deserve privacy and benefit of the doubt? Or are you Team Transparency, believing that royal privilege comes with non-negotiable accountability? Have you noticed inconsistencies that bother you? Or do you think the entire controversy is manufactured outrage with no substance? Most importantly, if you were advising Harry and Meghan right now, what would you tell them to do? Like this video if you want to see more deep dives into the royal stories that mainstream media won't fully explore. Share it with anyone who's been following this saga and wants to understand what's really at stake. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because this story is far from over. And when the next development drops, you'll want to be first to know. The walls are closing in on Montecito, the questions are getting louder, and the silence from California is becoming more deafening by the day. Something has to give. The only question is, what breaks first? See you in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video when this crisis inevitably takes its next turn. Because one thing is certain, this story isn't ending anytime soon.